These are things that I have written down that I believe everyone should do if they want to improve their speaking. First one is, when you are thinking about something in your head, always try to use English, and don't just keep it in your head, but actually say it. Talk to yourself. Maybe you don't do this in the elevator with other people, but if you're at home and you're not bothering anybody, talk to yourself. Talk to yourself about what you're doing. For example, okay, I'm sitting at my desk. I'm going to start my day. On my desk, I have a computer and I have a cup. Just basic things like this. It doesn't need to be anything serious. Just talk to yourself all the time. Okay? If you have a dog, talk to your dog. Talk to your cat. Number 2, if you study from a book, read the sentences out loud. Actually speak them. Don't just read them in your head. I said start by focusing on the individual words and sounds until you're very comfortable with them. So look at each word and practice pronouncing it. Then, after you feel very comfortable with the pronunciation, try to read it at a more natural speed and read it again and again until you feel very comfortable with it. Some people might find this boring, but for me, I find this to be very, very effective when I am studying language. If possible, ask a native speaker to check your pronunciation. So what I would do is I would read the sentence to myself, then maybe go find one of my coworkers or my wife and ask them, am I pronouncing this correctly? And for some of you, you might not have anyone to ask, so you can't do that part. But I still recommend reading sentences out loud, not just in your head. Next one, everybody can do. When you watch TV or movies, or you're listening to the radio, listening to a podcast, repeat what you hear and try to copy the way that the people say it. Try to copy the accent if you like the accent. Try to capture the same emotion that that person is using. So you're watching TV, you hear someone say something interesting, and they sound angry. Repeat the same thing that they said, and you try to sound angry also. Try to sound exactly the same as that person. Especially if it's a movie that you've watched before and you really like, that can help you to remember it, because every time it gets to that part of the movie, you can say the thing again, and you know how it feels, and you know what it means. Figure out what the most common things that you say in your language are. What are the things that you say every day in your first language? And then make sure that you know how to say them in English, and then try to use them every day. So, if you know, okay, every day I say hello. Do I know how to say hello in English? Yes, I do. Every day I ask in my first language, have you eaten lunch yet? Oh, but I don't know how to say that in English, so I should figure that out. And then, after you figure out how to say it, try to use it every day. Look for opportunities to use it every day so that you don't forget it. So every time that you say something in your first language, just think, do I know how to say that in English? No, I don't. So I'm going to check. And when I check and I find out how to say it, I'm going to write it down. And I'm going to make a flashcard. And then every day, I'm going to check the flashcards to help to keep these new things in my memory. Keep a diary in English. If your diary is not too personal, ask your teacher to check your writing for you, or ask a friend who speaks English to check your writing for you. You might not have anyone to check, but keeping the diary is still useful, because as you write down the things that you did or the things that you've been thinking, you really show yourself, oh wow, I don't know this vocabulary word. I need to go learn it. Or, oh, I don't know how to explain this thing that happened today. I should try to figure that out. One of the things that I think is most important is this next one. Study 15 to 30 minutes at the same time every day. So find a time that no one's going to bother you. Maybe it's right before you start work, or maybe it's right before you go to bed, or maybe it's during your lunch break. But try to set your studying to be at the same time every day so that it becomes automatic and you never forget to do it. And you only need to study 15 to 30 minutes if you're studying every day. A lot of us are busy. We don't have time to study for 2 hours every day. 15 to 30 minutes is enough, especially if you are using English in other parts of your life or listening to music and things like that very often. 2 more. Create measurable and realistic goals for yourself. So, set goals, but don't make them too difficult. And make sure that you can actually track these goals and check them and measure them. So then maybe you keep a diary about how many minutes per day you studied English. Keep a diary of how many vocab words you learned per day. And then say, okay, next week I want to increase that number by 5 or something like that. And the last one is, it's not that good now because of the COVID-19 situation, but make sure to look for opportunities to speak English with new people. People who maybe you are not comfortable speaking with. Because when you speak with people who you are not super comfortable with, it helps you to become more confident. And if you don't have friends who speak English, you don't know anyone who speaks English, if you live in a country that has foreign tourists, if possible, on your days off, go find some tourists and say, hey, I'm not selling anything. I just want to speak English. I will answer any questions you have about my city if you just let me speak English with you for 5 minutes. Or, I will be your tour guide for 1 hour for free, just because I want to speak English. Do you need any recommendations? Can I help you with anything? And maybe you're not the type of person that wants to do that thing, but if you are, I highly recommend it. I highly recommend all of these things.